Hello there, and welcome to Know Where to Hide. You may not realize it, but today is an election day. And it's not one to blow off. Okay, so it's an off-year election. I mean, last year was the big one, right? No, this one's important too. I've got details coming up.
All reporters are biased, the Idaho Press Club are biased, all media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Well, Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot. That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see
dark money is influencing policy.
Once again, welcome to Know Where to Hide. I'm Brian Hyde, and today is May 20th, which makes it an election day. Now, this is one of those elections where it may not even be happening, depending on where you happen to be watching this video. But you will see a few news headlines today, so let's bring those in. And here's from the Idaho Press: voters to weigh in on local highway district commissions, school levies, library board elections, and more on Tuesday. Okay. Idaho Capital Sun had a guest editorial here from Lance McGrath. Your library, your choice, why Idahoans should head to the polls for today's election. He says, by voting in your local library district elections, you have a say in how these vital institutions are run, writes guest columnist Lance McGrath. So if you weren't aware of it, here's what the statewide map looks like. Those areas that are grayed out are actually counties where there isn't an election today, but you'll see that the vast majority of the Idaho local taxing districts are having their consolidated elections. So let's go over just a couple of things that you probably will want to keep in mind, assuming that you're planning on exercising your vote today. I really hope you are. I know for some people this will catch them a little bit unawares, but if you go to voteidaho.gov, you'll see that Idaho has two possible dates for elections each year in May and November. These elections are held for everything from local districts up to presidential elections. So they encourage you to check out the election calendar for upcoming elections. Your specific local district may not have an election if there are no contested races or, for that matter, levies or other measures up for election. But there are three different types of elections that Idahoans can participate in. So you have general, primary, and then what we have today, consolidated or district elections. And these occur on a cycle. Yes, the polls are open from 8 o'clock this morning until 8 o'clock this evening. So even if you didn't get out during your lunch hour, you still have the opportunity. So here's what may be up for election in your county. And again, this is going to vary on where you live. It could be the auditorium district. It could be the highway district, hospital district, library district, water and sewer district. Here's a fun one. Weather modification. Actually, that's been a pretty common issue here. Or weather modification district, rather. School bond or levy, other ballot questions. And then you can go online. Again, this is at voteidaho.gov. You can actually pull up a sample ballot, find your polling location. The only counties that don't have an election today would be Blaine, Butte, Clark, Custer, Elmore, Lemhi, and Washington counties. But there you have it. Some incentive to hopefully get out there and make your voice heard. Look, I know it's so tempting, especially where last year, the electioneering, it gets so tiresome. And we start to wear down and I'm tired. I don't want to hear more political ads. I don't want to go think about more political things. I just want to get on with life. Okay, but this is a part of life. In fact, this is an important part. More important, in fact, because others might be tempted to downplay it as well. It's just the sewer district or whatever. But it's the little details that add up to whether or not we will have good governance or not. And on that note, I want to shift over to, so why is it? Why is it so hard, whether it's at the national or whether it's at the state level, to really get accountability? And sometimes it's because we're on totally different pages. Let's take a look at this. This is actually an email I received earlier today from Fred Birnbaum from the Idaho Freedom Foundation. But I love the observation that he makes here, and this rings very true to me. Whether it's Congress or the state legislature, Fred says the only way we will ultimately cut spending is by reducing appropriations, not just by chasing efficiencies. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing those things, but that's not the root of the problem. And he says, I pasted in a bullet point from below from a blog post, but more importantly, this can be backed up with the attachment, which is a monthly U.S. Treasury statement on revenues and expenses. Year to date through April, the federal government is spending 9% more than last fiscal year, 7% with timing adjustments. I'm not sure what all that means, but the deficit is up year to date 23%, Federal fiscal years October 1st through the following September. The only major department that's seen cuts is education. Now, the email goes on to tell us a little bit about why this is the case. It comes down to political will. Fred says, look, I respect what Trump and Musk are trying to do with DOGE, but it's plainly obvious that most Republicans in Congress are in no mood to cut spending. And therefore, spending is going to be higher in federal fiscal year 25 than it was in fiscal year 24, which will keep the debt and inflation cycle going. Cutting spending can now be categorized as a heroic act by elected officials. That brings to mind the old Russian proverb, the truth is invariably bitter. So that's what you're facing. Sorry if that seems like a black pill to some people. Oh, they won't cut in Congress. Well, the answer is look at the big, beautiful bill that they're putting together. Nope, the spending isn't cut. Fraud is exposed. Things are decried. Well, this is terrible. How wasteful. But they're still funding it at the same level. I know it kind of sends some mixed messages. So here's the bullet point that Fred was talking about. Why DOGE failed. Reasons Eric Boehm asked policy experts why the Department of Governmental Efficiency, or DOGE, failed to deliver the promised $2 trillion in cuts. By the way, as an aside, I think they've scaled it back now to like $150 billion, which, wow, that sounds like a lot of money. But compared to $2 trillion, chump change. So this is what Boccia had to say. Elon Musk had good intentions but failed by misunderstanding that large-scale federal government reform is not a prerogative of the executive. Instead of trying to do everything through the executive branch, DOGE could have put together a packet of budget cuts for Congress to consider, like the one that Senator Rand Paul asked Musk to assemble. But in an attempt to act unilaterally, DOGE limited itself in scope and sabotaged its own chances of success. Isn't that interesting? Cato's Ryan Bourne also weighed in, saying canceling non-priority grants and laying off workers only gets you so far, given the federal government primarily funnels money from some to others. Now, Boehm also highlighted another important factor. DOGE never asked for help from the budget experts who've spent years identifying prudent spending reforms. Boccia previously posted about this on X, picking up more than 500,000 views. Now, bottom line is there's a lack of accountability. And Congress has the ability, or at least it has claimed the ability, to kick the can down the road, to not to be accountable in their votes. In fact, this is why they prefer these omnibus measures, these stopgap measures, because everything is lumped into one bill, and then we can vote. Well, we had to, the defense spending was part of that, and that's the part about teaching transgender rats how to tap dance in Venezuela. Well, okay, that part we didn't agree with, but we had to have the budget spending in there. Yeah. It's lack of accountability. And until Congress feels that accountability, meaning like they're going to get voted out, it's not likely that anything's going to change. And of course, the same dynamic is at work at the state level. So this is the reason why I'm going to bring it around full circle here. If you want responsive government, if you want accountable government, you've got to be willing to show up even for the off year, boring little races that don't really seem to matter that much, because in the end they do. More importantly, it's about getting you and me familiar with the system, aware of where we stand on the various issues, and I would say also noticed and at least identifiable to those people in elected positions. They should know you by name. When you show up for a meeting, they should be like, oh, well, John's here, or Jane is here. We got to mind our P's and Q's because this person is paying attention. But it starts with using your influence, which you have, however big, however small. You need to be using it, and you need to use it where you're standing. So please, I'm asking you, don't overlook the opportunity to cast your vote today. If you still need to get up to speed on a few things, there are ways to do it. But check out where you're supposed to be voting, if you're supposed to be voting today, and go out there and use your influence as wisely as you can. I'm Brian Hyde, and this is Nowhere to Hide.
All reporters are biased. The Idaho Press Club are biased. All media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot. That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see
Dark money is influencing policy.